What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back in their Squiddy. They banned the world champion? This is crazy. So yesterday, we had an update to the suspended players list, and on it was a familiar name, Paulie Aronson, aka the 2023 world champion for Yu-Gi-Oh! And also the first ever US world champion. He also posted in both Facebook and Twitter, where you can see here that he actually received a 6-month suspension from organized play. He says, "Hey guys, today I received a 6-month suspension from organized play. Too long didn't read. I accidentally registered for a remote duel regional with a non-viable deck list, dropped, then re-registered, taking a round 1 loss with a corrected deck list. I thought this was okay because I was taking the round 1 loss, so it seemed no different than someone just late registering in the first place, but it turns out this is still against tournament policy, so they had no choice but to disqualify me. I actually looked it up myself later that night, and it's right there in the policy document on the bottom of page 28. You may not drop from an event and re-register in an attempt to submit a new deck list. To be clear, I never sat down to play round 1. I stated my intention was to drop and to re-register before round 1 was ever posted, just to correct this mistake, more or less. I was completely transparent about what I was doing and why, but a policy violation is still a policy violation, even if you thought it wasn't one. Ultimately, it's a learning experience. The lesson here is it's always good to learn and be as knowledgeable about policy as you possibly can, and if you think you found a clever workaround, double check first to make sure. So I won't be around for a little while, sorry guys. But unfortunately, or fortunately rather, I only received a 6-month suspension for this violation, meaning I'll see you guys at Worlds. As you guys know, the world champion does get a carryover pass, a free pass to Worlds again to defend his title on the consecutive Worlds. And the reason why he did what he did was, as you can see at the bottom of the tweet, he says, just in case anyone's curious, the original deck list was missing both purely happy memory and delicious memory. Now, obviously, you don't want to queue in an event with a broken deck list that's missing your key cards. That just makes 0 sense because you've already lost the game, right? Now, I can understand from Konami's perspective where this is actually a policy violation because a player who gains more information might want to resubmit their deck list, but that inherently gives that player an advantage because they're able to submit their deck list with new information after the fact, right? But in this case, it feels like he's completely trying to mitigate his errors by saying, hey, you know, like I submitted that deck list, you can see here I'm missing the cards. In this case, I think it's actually a genuine mistake. Like, Konami representatives can obviously check the deck list that he initially submitted, see who's missing those cards, and then compare with the new one that he submitted to see that it was not malicious, right? But at the same time, you know, obviously players can take advantage of this, so I can see from the policy standpoint where a punishment is warranted. But personally, I feel like it should be more, it should be less strict. It should be more on a case-to-case basis, seeing that, you know, he didn't do this on purpose. A disqualification might have been enough of a punishment as opposed to a suspension. But that being said, it's also in the Konami policy docs, so R&D might have not had a choice. In fact, they might have been quite lenient in giving him a 6-month suspension as opposed to a 1-year suspension, because if you got a 1-year suspension, that means he's also missing Worlds, right? So they might have been as lenient as they possibly could with what powers they had by giving him a 6-month suspension, where the traditionally players generally get like 1 year minimum for something like this. I think it's really unfortunate that he did get suspended for this, but fortunately there is silver lining. He will still be able to attend Worlds. You know, 6 months is not the end of the world. Taking a small break from Yu-Gi-Oh, I think that's fine in any capacity. Now, one thing to note is that this is actually not the first time a world champion has actually been banned. In 2014, the world champion Sahabi Karadine, who was actually the first ever North American world champion, he's Canadian. After winning the world championship 2014, he was later banned at a YCS, and he was actually banned for a whole year, meaning he was not able to actually attend the world championship 2015 because his invite was rescinded after getting banned for that duration. So that was a little unfortunate, but it's just it just shows that, you know, there's actually a lot of players who can get banned regardless of their achievements. You could be a world champion, you could be a, you know, national champion, but that doesn't stop you. That doesn't disqualify you from the Konami official policy. There's actually another case of a world champion from the 2017 Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships actually getting disqualified from an event in the OCG, and he was actually disqualified from the Hattie Grand Championship for supposedly doing something on the stream, on the camera directly. And I'm not actually sure if he was punished directly by Konami, because in the OCG in the Japan, they have what are called CS or championships, which are unofficial events organized by non-Konami TOs. So I'm not actually sure if he was banned directly or suspended by Konami, but he was actually, there was a big fuss about it online on Twitter because the OCG community does use Twitter predominantly for Yu-Gi-Oh! Related things, I found. And there was even a news article on the Anime News Network where it actually has some footage, and he was actually disqualified and barred immediately, indefinitely, from participating in the Hattie Grand Championship series. So Yeah, it just goes to show that, you know, like being a world champion or a very decorated player, things can still happen to you. In fact, more so even because the spotlight is kind of on you to do the correct things or like play, you know, according to the rules. But at the end of the day, we're all human. And I think it's just unfortunate that going back to the original issue that Paulie was banned because of a honest mistake, which seems like an absolutely honest mistake in my opinion. But I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this as a whole. Like, what do you think about the suspension policy? Do you think that, you know, the policy is too strict, or is this something that we actually need to maintain the integrity of the game and make sure that no one's actually gaining any subtle advantages over other players that are entering a tournament? Or is this something that you think could be loosened up upon? Maybe R&D could take a case-to-case basis to look at suspensions and disqualifications to justify whether or not a suspension is warranted. Because it feels like every time a player has been disqualified, they've traditionally just been suspended no matter what. And the other unfortunate thing is the fact that the suspensions are not immediate. Like, he played this right after Worlds, which was a couple of months ago, and now we're only seeing the suspension now, right? The Worlds took place, I think, in August, so we're seeing a suspension like 3 months later, and the time served only starts at the suspension time. So I feel like, you know, like if they could have a quicker turnaround time, it'd be a lot more generous for the players, because then they're not kind of traveling in limbo, you know, fearing if they're going to get banned immediately on the next day, right? So it kind of like allows them to adjust and also allows that time to tick down a lot sooner. So then they are able to make certain events like Worlds in this case, but luckily it's only for 6 months, so we don't have that problem. But yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole entire thing. Let us know in the comments below. Other than that, subscribe and we'll see y'all later.